Good morning. Welcome to this conversation of colleagues discussing a really exciting opportunity for those of us that work in the diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racist space to partner with the Ignatian Solidarity Network to bring some development and training modules to the Ignatian Family Teach-In. My name is Jamal Adams. I am the Director of Equity and Inclusion at Loyola High School, and I'm honored to be in this space with three gentlemen and colleagues of mine that have helped kind of bring this to light. To give you a little bit of background to the genesis of this idea and this partnership, it is my honor to introduce Marco Gonzales.
Hello, everybody. I'm grateful to be here, as Jamal mentioned, with such great folks, and excited to be connecting with you all. I serve as the Director of Trauma-Informed Education at Chicago Jesuit Academy, and, in wake of the death of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor, many have been awakening to the pandemic that has been long present within our nation of systemic racism. And now in search of resources, in search of ways to address and to dismantle the racism that's so present within all of the institutions that many of us exist in. And so as we had been gathering collectively with other folks involved in this work, in reflecting on the ways in which the Ignatian Family Teach-In for Justice has been a constant space of gathering of folks who are genuinely interested and desiring to move forward our faith that seeks justice. I had been excited to reach out to Chris and to Aaron, who, in collaborating and coordinating the creation of the IFTJ, were very open to the idea of creating more spaces for all of us as Ignatian educators who are seeking ways to be actors and agents and collaborators in this work, so that we might be able to really move the dial forward in each of our institutions, that we can call to mind what it means to be an Ignatian educator, and uniting that reality that as Ignatian educators, we're called towards anti-racism. But there's a work that needs to be done in each of us within our institutions. And that's what this opportunity will provide. We hope for all of you who are interested in engaging in this work to be able to dive in together. And this has been work that I think has been scaffolded over months and years, much work that Jamal and Carlos, who join us, have been long a part of. So I'd love to invite them to share a little bit about the work that we've been collectively involved in.
Thank you, Marcos. That was an amazing overview. I do think it's prime. I'm excited to bring another colleague of mine, Carlos Jiménez, and I think last year we were both fortunate to be asked to be co-chairs of putting together a gathering of Jesuit School Network diversity, equity, inclusion practitioners in Chicago. Unfortunately, we lost that gathering due to the pandemic caused by COVID-19. But in that space, we were thinking very intentionally about what we wanted to accomplish over those couple of days. And I think that information also informed this matrix that we're going to be presenting to you shortly. So if I can, I'd like to welcome again a dear friend and colleague, Carlos Jiménez, to speak a little bit about some of that work and how it informed what we are presenting to you all today.
Thank you very much, Jamal. Yes, thank you. I'm Carlos Jiménez, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion of Bellarmine College Prep in San Jose. And as my wonderful friends and colleagues were talking about, this is something that we have been thinking about for a long time. And when COVID hit, and we worked very hard for many months preparing for the DEI directors gathering, when that was canceled, that was a huge blow for us, because we don't get enough opportunities as people that do this work, this mission-centered, necessary work in our institutions. So when that didn't happen, we were, again, very disappointed. And then really what was wonderful is that from that, like this grassroots movement happened, in which we started like saying, hey, we started in small groups, wanting to continue the conversation. Part of the goal that we had for the gathering was going to be to really get folks together, share resources, start thinking about ways that we could be more collectively impactful in our institutions. So we started doing that through, again, the silver linings of Zoom and like remote conversation. We were able to start gathering, and those meetings have, again, started in March and have been continuing weekly. We meet weekly. We're again, both as a space to share our own experience of the pandemic, how that has impacted our work. How are we responding? Hey, here's a great resource. Hey, try this. And that has just created a wonderful community that I don't think we would have been able to form otherwise. And again, highlighting the importance of collectively working towards greater equity, towards justice in our institutions, because we all have different experiences. We're in our spaces. Some of us are finding that the work of equity and justice has been happening for many years. Others don't have a designated person to do DEI work. And as Marcos was saying, then how do we respond to the situation post George Floyd, post the summer of 2020, where a lot of things happened in our nation, and this reckoning that we're facing again in our own individual institutions, but then as JSN, ISN, how do we respond collectively so that we can lead our institutions towards transformation and towards just better institutions of culturally relevant institutions in the best way that meets our needs. So that's what's been happening since we've been meeting.
Thank you again, Carlos, again for bringing some more color to our work. And so as the three of us, Marcos and Carlos, started to gather or discuss gathering with Chris and Aaron about this partnership with the Ignatian Solidarity Network, Chris suggested that we bring in some additional firepower. And in that, he reached out to Dr. Nate Sessoms, who is at Loyola Marymount, is a gentleman that, because of our proximity here in Los Angeles, I've had the great pleasure of spending some time with, and particularly talking around issues of higher ed for African-American students. What Nate really brought to us, and I'm hoping he could speak about, was that in our early conversations, we kept talking about these different areas in terms of the way that one might move through this work from an individual standpoint, interpersonal standpoint, and institutional standpoint, and then maybe some overlying kind of bigger swaths, DEI, implicit bias, anti-racism, and mission and identity as areas, all these areas that were coming up in our conversation. It was with his great wisdom that he began to kind of put together this matrix. And so in that, Nate, I'd love if you could illuminate, again, the framework of the matrix, and then particularly where you have been so key to our mission here is in really illuminating kind of some of the different subsects that fall under the different cross sections on the matrix. So without further ado, I'm honored to introduce you all to Dr. Nate Sessoms.
Thanks, Jamal. Appreciate you as well as Carlos and Marcos. Honored to be engaged in this very, very important work with the three of you and to engage in this conversation this morning. I'm Nate Sessoms. I am an adjunct professor in the Department of Sociology at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. Formerly the director of the Office of Black Student Services for about 6 years at LMU as well. I've been involved with ISN for about 6 years, served on the advisory board, and have remained in conversation with colleagues like Jamal, Carlos and Marcos, and also Chris and Aaron. So was very happy to engage with the group and discuss ideas and sort of ways to move forward. The matrix is it basically represents a way of thinking about DEI and A work at various levels. It's a conceptual diagram that allows us to address what I think is a very common challenge with respect to approaching, understanding, and addressing race and racism in our personal lives, as well as with each other and within our places of employment. So one of the many reasons that conversations on race and racism are so difficult and challenging is that people are attempting to enter the space from very different points along the continuum. Some people know very little about race. Others know a lot about it, deal with it on a daily basis. And so therefore, they think about it and talk about it all the time. And so it's hard for people to have conversations about something when they enter it from vastly different perspectives. So the Matrix seeks to relieve some of the barriers and some of the stress, and that allows people from the various vantage points to enter the conversation. And so whether you're seeking personal development and growth with respect to race and racism, and perhaps you don't know anything about anti-racism, if you want to improve your ability to engage with your colleagues with respect to the topics of race and racism, and you're learning more about implicit bias, or you're experienced and you're seeking to influence institutions, your work is more broadly focused, and you're focused on larger processes, the Matrix allows you to engage, increase your knowledge base, and further build your skill set. So coming from the standpoint that we need everyone to be engaged in the conversation and commit to taking action in some way, shape, or form, the Matrix is one way to guide us in doing that.
Thank you, Nate. With a little bit of time left, I'm going to open up our positive question to you guys, and we'll let you guys go in the order that you all see fit. And that would be this, right? As someone looks at the Matrix, looks at the menu of talks that will be sponsored in this space, what do you imagine, or what would you want them to be considering or thinking about, or what might be some goals for this week that you think could be helpful, that would help them to internalize or rationalize what we're presenting to them in this opportunity?
Yeah, what comes to mind for me is that this is our work as members of the Ignatian family. From every place, from the students to the teachers, from the administrators to the board members, family and community. This is all of our collective work, our collective responsibility. And what I'm so grateful for in the Matrix that Dr. Nate presented is that there's an entry point for all of us. No matter where you're coming from, this is for us. And we all need to be a part of this conversation, be actively engaged in this work. And I'm grateful for the community, as Carlos mentioned, that grows in our Ignatian family. And so knowing that this family is large, there's room for all of us. And the Matrix creates space for each of us to be able to engage in that way.
I would just add that as people that are practitioners of this work, that do this work in our communities, one of the things that I thought only happened to me, but then I later found when I started meeting others, is like how lonely the work is, how difficult the weight of it. Often, we're charged with basically one of the most integral pillars of our schools, and we're not even often like doing this work 100%. We're coaching, we're teaching, we're doing all these other things. So to piggyback with what Marcos is saying is like having this framework, having this space to again, notice that you're not alone, that there's actually not a roadmap, but at least, as I was said, a framework that can guide your efforts, that you can point to, because often it's difficult to find this. But this is also, again, created by us. It has the Ignatian focus, our mission, what makes us a Jesuit institution. So it's really wonderful. And I just by being part of this process, I have grown so much, and my practice has been enhanced. So I can only be excited about where we're going to end up as we continue in this path.
I would certainly echo the sentiments of my colleagues, and so that I don't repeat what they said. I'll offer that one of the most amazing people I've met in my life, I met actually at LMU. Her name is Helen Singleton. She is married to Bob Singleton. The two of them were freedom riders, and were some of the initial individuals to serve in that role. They were arrested. They were imprisoned in Parchment Prison in Mississippi in, I believe it was 1960, 1961. And they're still around talking about their experiences. But when I speak with Helen, she always reminds me of one of Dr. King's most famous quotes, and that is, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. And she always asks, do you know how it bends? And I think a lot of people think, well, it bends because it's the arc, but it bends. And she always reminds me that it bends because people move it, people push it, people make the arc bend. And so she always encourages me to do the work that I need to do. And I know she's doing that on a much larger basis and platform. But I think along those lines, the matrix serves as a way of thinking, but it's also an invitation for people to get involved, to see themselves in all the offerings. And as I mentioned earlier, in however they see themselves in the matrix at this point, we hope that will grow. But at any stage, they too can engage in pushing on the arc and bending it.
Awesome answers, gentlemen. If I can add a little just to that same answer to myself as we close this up, I'll just succinctly say that I think our Jesuit heritage often talks about being called. And the way I would hope people hear this is that we are called to this space. As my colleagues have said, this is centered in our mission, this idea of men and women for and with others, a faith that does justice. All of this is asking us to be more cognizant of all the different ethnic and nationality-based issues that we may have in our current context, and to continue to fight the good fight, and to continue to make sure that justice is had by all, and that those of us in our spaces are being served in a way that equity and inclusion are centered. And so, again, I want to say thank you to the Ignatian Solidarity Network for allowing the four of us to partner in building this matrix. And specifically, as you enter into this space, I really want to say thank you to all of my colleagues around the country that are entered into this work, that have given themselves to put together talks and breakout sessions to continue to lift this work up and to illuminate its importance in our institutions. Take care, God bless, and look forward to seeing you all at the Ignatian Family Teach-In.